You're an embarrassing burden who needs to disappear. That's what my daughter said to me last Tuesday night. Word for word. I'm Douglas Walsh, 71 years old, and apparently the father of a pharmaceutical CEO who's ashamed I exist. Victoria thinks I'm just some old man living in a rundown duplex, driving a beat-up car, having panic attacks that embarrass her in front of important people. What she doesn't know is that I've been hiding something for 30 years. Something that would make every single one of her fancy industry colleagues drop to their knees and beg for my respect. So when Victoria told me to disappear, I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. But first, I made one phone call that changed everything. The kind of call that gets the Pentagon's attention. The kind that makes CEOs realize they've been judging the wrong person. The kind that turns a pharmaceutical industry gala into the most humiliating night of someone's life. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button, because you're about to hear how I taught my daughter the difference between success and respect. And trust me, you'll want to share this with anyone who's ever been underestimated. This is the story of how calling your father a burden became the biggest mistake of my daughter's career. Let me paint you a picture of how pathetic I must have looked to Victoria and her husband Bennett. I live in a 1,200 square foot duplex in Arlington, built in 1952. Original hardwood floors that creak when you walk. The place is worth maybe $180,000 on a good day. My neighbors are mostly veterans like me, retired teachers, postal workers, good people who wave from their porches and actually know each other's names. I drive a 2011 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles on it. Faded blue paint. The radio only picks up AM stations. No air conditioning that works properly. When I park it next to Victoria's 2023 BMW X7, the one with personalized plates reading CEO VW, you can practically feel the shame radiating off her. Every morning at 5:30, I'm up. Coffee in a mug that says, "World's Greatest Dad." Victoria gave it to me 15 years ago when she still called me Daddy. I volunteer at the VA hospital 3 days a week, helping guys navigate the paperwork maze. The other days, I'm at Harris Teeter with my paper coupons, shopping the early bird specials. $5 off when you buy 10 Campbell's soup cans. That kind of thing. My entire wardrobe comes from Walmart and Target clearance racks. Polo shirts for $12, khakis for $15, work boots that last 3 years if you're careful. I keep my hair cut short at the barber shop on Wilson Boulevard. $8, tip included. Here's what really got to Victoria. I have episodes. PTSD, they call it now. Loud noises make me hit the deck. Sudden movements, I'm checking exits. Crowded restaurants, I need my back to the wall. It's been 50 years since Vietnam, but my nervous system didn't get the memo. Last month, Victoria brought Bennett and some pharmaceutical industry people to dinner at my place. I'd spent all day making pot roast, setting up folding chairs from the church. Everything was going fine until a motorcycle backfired outside. I dropped to the floor like I'd been shot. Dead silence. Victoria's face went white, then red. Bennett cleared his throat and suggested maybe we should call it a night. The pharmaceutical executives exchanged those looks. You know the ones. Poor old man. How embarrassing for Victoria. After they left, I found Victoria sitting in her BMW crying. But not the kind of crying you do when you're worried about someone. The kind you do when you're mortified. "Dad, you can't keep doing this," she said through the window. "These people are important. They're deciding whether to invest $50 million in our IPO. They need to see stability, professionalism, not..." She gestured at my duplex, my ancient Civic, me standing there in my $12 Walmart polo. Not this. That's when I realized, in Victoria's world, I wasn't her father anymore. I was a liability, a problem to be managed. Evidence that she came from nothing, and nothing was something she'd spent her entire adult life trying to escape. See, Victoria went to Harvard, graduated summa cum laude, got her MBA from Wharton, married into the Crawford pharmaceutical dynasty, old money that goes back 4 generations. Bennett's grandfather founded the company. His father built it into a Fortune 500 empire. Now Victoria runs it, and she's brilliant at the job. But every time I show up, I remind everyone that she wasn't born into this world. She clawed her way in, and in a business where pedigree matters more than performance, that's dangerous. The thing is, Victoria had no idea why I live so simply. Why I chose the duplex over something bigger, why I drove the old Civic instead of buying new, why I turned down every ceremony, every honor, every opportunity to be recognized for what I'd done in service to this country. She was about to find out. But first, she was going to get exactly what she'd asked for. Let me explain what Victoria was really fighting for, because this wasn't just about embarrassment. This was about her entire future, and she was willing to sacrifice our relationship to protect it. Crawford Pharmaceuticals was preparing for an IPO, initial public offering, going public. They were looking to raise $500 million from institutional investors, pension funds, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, the kind of money that transforms a family business into a global powerhouse. But here's the thing about institutional investors. They don't just evaluate your company's performance. They evaluate you, your background, your connections, your family. They want to know if you're someone they can trust with their billions. And in the pharmaceutical industry, that means old money, established connections, social credibility. Victoria had spent 3 years preparing for this IPO, working 18-hour days, flying to meetings in Switzerland, Singapore, Dubai, building relationships with investors who could make or break the deal. Everything was riding on appearing legitimate, established, worthy of their confidence. Then there was Bennett's family pressure. The Crawford name had been pristine for 90 years. No scandals, no embarrassments, no complications. Bennett's mother, Patricia Crawford, made it very clear that Victoria needed to maintain appropriate family standards if she wanted to remain part of their legacy. I'd overheard Bennett on the phone with his mother last month. Patricia, Victoria's father, is challenging. He lives in some working-class neighborhood, drives a car older than most of our employees. Has these episodes where he drops to the floor. It doesn't project the image we need. The pharmaceutical industry gala was coming up, September 15th. 300 industry leaders, potential investors, regulatory officials. The kind of event where deals get made and reputations get established. Victoria had been planning her presentation for months. This was her moment to prove she belonged in their world. But she was terrified I'd show up. "Dad, I need you to understand something," she'd said during one of our increasingly tense conversations. "Bennett's board is watching everything. Every detail matters. The investors are looking for any reason to question our judgment. If they see you—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. If they saw me, the old veteran with PTSD, living in a duplex, shopping with coupons, they'd know she came from nothing. And in their world, nothing stays nothing. The pressure was crushing her. I could see it in her face, hear it in her voice. She was losing weight, missing sleep, snapping at her assistants. Bennett was getting cold feet about their marriage. His family was asking pointed questions about her background compatibility. Victoria had clawed her way from a working-class childhood to the CEO chair of a pharmaceutical empire. She'd earned every promotion, every recognition, every dollar. But none of that mattered if the investment community decided she didn't have the right pedigree. And I was the living proof that she didn't. So when Victoria suggested I might be happier in assisted living, it wasn't just about convenience. When Bennett started leaving brochures for premium senior communities on my kitchen table, it wasn't about my health. When they offered to pay for a beautiful facility with full-time care, it wasn't about love. It was about making me disappear. The cruel mathematics were simple. Victoria's future was worth more than our relationship. Her success mattered more than my dignity. Her image was more important than my existence. And maybe she was right. Maybe I was holding her back. Maybe my presence in her life was genuinely damaging something she'd worked her entire career to build. Maybe the kindest thing I could do was step aside and let her succeed without the burden of an embarrassing father. That's what kept me awake at night. Not the cruelty of it, but the possibility that she was right. Victoria had sacrificed everything for this moment. Her 20s spent studying while her friends partied. Her 30s building the company while her peers started families. She'd earned this success. She deserved to enjoy it without worrying about whether her father would embarrass her at the company Christmas party. But here's what Victoria didn't understand. I'd made sacrifices too. Bigger ones than she could imagine. And while she was busy being ashamed of where she came from, she'd forgotten to ask where her opportunities had come from in the first place. The phone call that changed everything was coming. The one that would remind her that sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who choose to stay quiet. But I wasn't ready to make that call yet. First, I wanted to see how far she'd go, how much of our relationship she was willing to destroy to protect her precious image. I was about to find out. The intervention happened on a Thursday evening. I knew something was wrong when Victoria called and asked if she could stop by with Bennett around 7 o'clock. Victoria never just stopped by. Everything with her was scheduled, planned, coordinated through her assistant. They showed up in Bennett's Porsche Cayenne, black, spotless, the kind of car that costs more than most people make in 2 years. Victoria was carrying a leather portfolio, the expensive kind lawyers use. Bennett had his game face on. They sat on my old couch, the one I'd bought at a yard sale 12 years ago. Victoria perched on the edge like she might catch something. Bennett kept checking his Rolex. "Dad, we need to talk." Victoria's voice had that professional tone she used in board meetings. All business, no emotion. "About what?" "Your living situation." She opened the portfolio and pulled out glossy brochures. Heritage Gardens Senior Living, Arlington Heights Assisted Care, Potomac River Retirement Community. Full-color photos of smiling elderly people playing chess, doing watercolor painting, taking yoga classes. "These are beautiful facilities," Victoria said, spreading the brochures on my coffee table. "Full-time medical staff, organized activities, nutritious meals prepared by professional chefs. You'd have your own apartment, but with help when you need it." I picked up one of the brochures. Heritage Gardens, starting at $4,200 per month for basic care. Premium suites available. "The cost isn't an issue," Bennett said quickly. "We'd handle all the expenses. Think of it as an investment in your health and happiness." "My health and happiness." "Dad, you're 71 years old," Victoria said, "living alone in this neighborhood. What happens if you have another episode and there's nobody around to help? What if you fall down those front steps? What if someone breaks in?" "Someone breaks in?" "Crime is increasing in this area," Bennett added. "The property values are declining. Your neighbors are transient. My neighbors, Mrs. Patterson, who brought me soup when I had the flu, Miguel Santos, who fixed my leaky faucet for free, Jimmy Rodriguez, who shovels my walkway every snowstorm without being asked. Where would you get the money for these places?" I asked. Victoria and Bennett exchanged a look. "Well," Victoria said carefully, "you'd need to sell the duplex. The equity would cover the initial costs and we'd supplement the monthly fees." "Sell the duplex." "Dad, let's be realistic. This place is falling apart. The roof needs work. The plumbing is ancient. The neighborhood is going downhill. You could get maybe $200,000 for it, and that money would go much further at a proper facility." I set down the brochure. "What's this really about, Victoria?" Another look between them. "It's about what's best for everyone," Bennett said. "You'd be safer, healthier, happier, and Victoria wouldn't have to worry about you anymore." "Worry about me?" "Dad, I do worry," Victoria said, and for a moment her professional mask slipped. "I worry about you living alone. I worry about your episodes. I worry about what would happen if something serious happened and I couldn't help you." She was good, almost convincing, but I caught the real tell. Bennett checking his phone during her emotional speech. This wasn't about my well-being. This was about their convenience. "The pharmaceutical gala is next week," Victoria continued. "I'd love for you to attend, but in your current state." My current state. "The PTSD episodes, Dad. They're getting worse. Last month at dinner, you scared our guests. Bennett's board members are still talking about it." Bennett nodded gravely. "It reflects on Victoria's judgment, her ability to manage challenging situations." "Challenging situations? Is that what I am?" "You're my father," Victoria said quickly. "But you're also complicated. The investors we're courting, they need to see stability, competence, control. And I'm none of those things." "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" Silence. Victoria stared at her hands. Bennett checked his phone again. "We're saying," Bennett finally answered, "that perhaps it's time to consider what arrangement would benefit everyone involved." Everyone involved. "The assisted living facility would provide professional care," Victoria said. "You'd have medical supervision, social activities, proper nutrition. And I could focus on the IPO without constantly worrying about whether you're okay. Without worrying about whether I'll embarrass you." Victoria's face flushed. "That's not fair, isn't it? Dad, I love you. But I also have responsibilities. To the company, to our employees, to Bennett's family. I can't let personal complications jeopardize everything we've built. Personal complications. That's what I'd become. How long have you been planning this? I asked. We've been discussing options for several months, Bennett admitted. Several months. While I was volunteering at the VA hospital, helping other veterans navigate their benefits. While I was grocery shopping with coupons, trying not to be a financial burden. While I was declining every military honor and ceremony invitation, trying not to embarrass Victoria with my complications. They'd been planning to warehouse me. I need to think about this, I said. Of course, Victoria said, standing up. Take your time, but Dad, the gala is September 15th. It would be better for everyone if we had this resolved before then. After they left, I sat on my yard sale couch surrounded by glossy brochures for assisted living facilities. Beautiful places where old men go to die quietly, out of sight, out of mind. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the contacts I never called. Names with titles that would make Victoria's pharmaceutical investors genuflect. Numbers that could connect me to the Pentagon, the CIA, the highest levels of government. For 50 years I'd kept those connections private. I'd lived quietly, modestly, invisibly. But Victoria wanted me to disappear completely. Time to remind her who she was talking to. The first hint that I wasn't quite who Victoria thought I was came the next morning. I was at Harris Teeter using my paper coupons as usual when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I recognized but hadn't seen in 3 years. Pentagon Personnel Office. Mr. Walsh, this is Colonel Patricia Stevens from the Secretary of Defense's office. I hope I'm not calling at an inconvenient time. I glanced around the cereal aisle. Mrs. Chen from down the street was comparing Cheerios prices. Nobody paying attention to the old man with the flip phone. It's fine, Colonel. What can I do for you? Sir, we're preparing for the annual Veterans Recognition Ceremony at the Pentagon. Secretary Martinez would very much like you to attend this year, as an honored guest. I appreciate the invitation, Colonel, but you know my answer. Sir, with respect, it's been 30 years since Operation Lamson. The classified restrictions have been lifted. Your service record is now available for review. The Secretary believes it's time for proper recognition. I pushed my cart past the soup display. Campbell's chicken noodle, 10 for $5 with my coupon. The answer is still no, Colonel. Mr. Walsh, 3 sitting generals have requested personal meetings with you. General Hayes from the Joint Chiefs specifically asked me to mention that your, quote, continued anonymity is making us all look bad, unquote. Despite everything, I smiled. Bob Hayes, still trying to give me medals after all these years. Tell General Hayes I said hello, but no ceremonies. Sir, may I ask why? Your record speaks for itself. 23 soldiers rescued under heavy fire. Purple Heart, Bronze Star, CIA commendation for intelligence work that saved American lives. Why won't you accept recognition? Because my daughter is ashamed of me, I thought. Because she thinks I'm an embarrassing old man who needs to be hidden away. Personal reasons, Colonel. Sir, I have to inform you that your name has been submitted for the Congressional Medal of Honor. The review board meets next month. With or without your cooperation, this recognition is going forward. I stopped pushing my cart. Colonel, I specifically requested no further nominations. Sir, that request came from you personally, but it turns out other people have been submitting nominations for 30 years. Veterans you served with, CIA colleagues, even some of the soldiers you saved. The paperwork has been piling up. An elderly man in a veteran's cap walked past and nodded. I nodded back. In Arlington, we recognize each other. How many nominations? I asked. 47, sir. The most recent was submitted last week by General Martinez himself. He used words like unprecedented heroism and national treasure. 47 nominations. For 30 years, people had been trying to honor me while I was trying to stay invisible. While Victoria was worrying about her image, the United States military was building a file that could make her the proudest daughter in America. Colonel, I'll need to think about this. Sir, I should mention that several media outlets have filed Freedom of Information requests. With the classification lifted, your story is becoming public whether you participate or not. The Washington Post is preparing a feature article. After I hung up, I stood in the Harris Teeter parking lot, staring at my old Honda Civic. 47 nominations. General Martinez, the Secretary of Defense, calling me a national treasure. Congressional Medal of Honor review. Meanwhile, Victoria wanted to stick me in assisted living because I was an embarrassment. The second hint came that afternoon. I was working at the VA hospital, helping Jimmy Peterson navigate his disability claim paperwork. Jimmy lost his leg in Afghanistan, been fighting the bureaucracy for 2 years. "Mr. Walsh," he said, "I don't know how you do it. Every time I mention your name around here, people stand up straighter, like you're some kind of legend." "I just know how to read the forms, Jimmy." "Nah, it's more than that. Dr. Rodriguez told me you've gotten more veterans their benefits than anyone in the history of this hospital. Said you have connections that go all the way to the top." I helped Jimmy fill out Form VA-21-526-EZ for the third time. Same information, different format. The VA loves its paperwork. "Mr. Walsh?" a voice behind me. I turned around to see Dr. Elizabeth Torres, the hospital administrator. "Could I speak with you privately?" We walked to her office. She closed the door. "Doug, I got a call today from the Veterans Affairs Secretary's office. They're planning something special for the annual gala next month. Your name came up." "In what context?" "As someone they'd very much like to honor publicly. Apparently your service record has been declassified." They used words like extraordinary and historically significant. "Dr. Torres, I'm not interested in ceremonies." "I understand. But Doug, there are reporters asking questions. The VA wants to get ahead of the story. They'd rather honor you properly than have your story come out without context." After I left the hospital, I drove through Arlington, thinking about secrets, about the difference between humility and hiding, about what Victoria would say if she knew that while she was ashamed of her father, the Pentagon was trying to give him the nation's highest honor. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my old Civic, looking at my modest duplex. 47 nominations, Congressional Medal of Honor, Secretary of Defense calling me a national treasure. Victoria thought I was a burden. Time to show her the difference between embarrassment and honor. But first, I had a phone call to make. The Pharmaceutical Industry Board dinner happened at the Willard Intercontinental Hotel on September 10th, 5 days before the big gala. Victoria had specifically told me not to come, but Bennett's assistant called that morning with a last-minute invitation. "Mr. Walsh, this is Jennifer from Crawford Pharmaceuticals. Mr. Crawford asked me to invite you to tonight's board dinner, 7 o'clock at the Willard. Business casual attire." Business casual. I owned one sport jacket, navy blue, bought at Men's Warehouse in 2019 for Victoria's wedding. It still had the tags on it. I should have stayed home, should have respected Victoria's wishes, but something about that assistant's tone, like she was reading from a script, made me suspicious. This felt like a setup. I arrived at 7 sharp. The Willard's lobby was all marble and crystal, the kind of place where dinner costs more than my monthly grocery budget. Victoria and Bennett were holding court at a table with 6 other people, board members, investors, pharmaceutical executives. Victoria saw me walk in and her face went white, not just pale, completely drained of color. She whispered something to Bennett, who turned and saw me approaching. "Dad." Victoria stood up quickly. "I didn't know you were coming." "Your husband's assistant invited me." Bennett looked confused. "I didn't ask Jennifer to call anyone." Awkward pause. One of the board members, a thin man in an expensive suit, extended his hand. "You must be Victoria's father. I'm Harrison Webb, Crawford's chief financial officer." "Doug Walsh." "Please join us," said a woman with perfect silver hair. "I'm Patricia Crawford, Bennett's mother." The matriarch herself. I'd heard about Patricia Crawford, but never met her. Old pharmaceutical money, social register family, the kind of woman who'd judge you by your shoes and find you wanting. "Mr. Walsh," said another man. "I'm Dr. Richard Sterling, head of research and development. Victoria speaks of you often." That was a lie. Victoria never spoke of me to her colleagues if she could help it. I sat down in the empty chair they'd apparently set for me, though nobody seemed to know why it was there. The conversation resumed. IPO timelines, FDA approvals, market penetration strategies. I listened and ate my salmon, trying not to embarrass anyone. Everything was going fine until the kitchen door slammed. The sound hit me like a physical blow, loud, sudden, unexpected. In a split second, my nervous system was back in Vietnam, under enemy fire, taking incoming rounds. I hit the floor. Not gracefully, not quietly. I dropped straight down, overturning my chair, scanning for exits, looking for cover. Training kicked in. Assess threats, find protection, prepare for combat. Dead silence. 6 pharmaceutical executives staring down at a 71-year-old man crouched beside an overturned chair at the Willard Intercontinental Hotel. "Dad!" Victoria's voice was sharp with panic and embarrassment. I realized where I was. The present, not the past. A restaurant, not a battlefield. I stood up slowly, righted my chair, sat back down. My hands were shaking. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Loud noises sometimes." "Are you all right?" Dr. Sterling asked. He seemed genuinely concerned. "Fine, just fine." But I wasn't fine, and everyone knew it. The careful dinner conversation resumed, but you could feel the tension. People choosing their words carefully, avoiding sudden movements, glancing at me with that mixture of pity and discomfort that follows a public breakdown. Victoria's face was frozen in a professional smile, but her eyes were mortified. Bennett kept checking his phone like he had somewhere urgent to be. Patricia Crawford studied me with the cold assessment of someone evaluating damaged goods. "Mr. Walsh," Harrison Webb said carefully, "have you been to many industry events?" "This is my first." "Well, we're honored to have you. Victoria's told us so much about your background." Another lie. Victoria had told them nothing because she was ashamed of my background. "What line of work were you in?" Patricia Crawford asked. "I served in Vietnam. After that, government work." "Government work? How interesting. What department?" I could have ended the conversation right there. Could have mentioned the CIA, the Pentagon connections, the classified work that paid for Victoria's college education. Could have dropped names that would make these pharmaceutical executives stop judging me by my Men's Warehouse sport jacket. Instead, I said nothing glamorous, paperwork mostly. Victoria looked relieved. Bennett relaxed slightly. They thought I was playing along, keeping my background appropriately vague and humble. Then Dr. Sterling's phone rang. "I'm sorry, I have to take this," he said, stepping away from the table. "It's the FDA about our drug approval timeline." While he was gone, the conversation turned to industry gossip. Who was buying whom, which companies were struggling, whose IPO was succeeding or failing. I listened and learned things Victoria would probably prefer I didn't know. Crawford Pharmaceuticals was not in great shape. The IPO was make or break. They needed $500 million to fund research for their next generation of drugs. Without it, they'd be acquired by a larger company, probably at a fraction of their hoped-for valuation. Bennett's family money was already invested. Patricia Crawford had put her personal fortune on the line. Victoria's reputation was the only thing standing between success and catastrophe, and I was the weak link. The embarrassing father who dropped to the floor when kitchen doors slammed. Dr. Sterling returned to the table looking puzzled. "That was odd," he said. "The FDA mentioned they'd gotten an inquiry about our company from the Veterans Affairs Office. Something about family connections to military personnel. They wouldn't give details." Victoria went rigid. "What kind of inquiry? Background check, maybe? They asked about our corporate leadership, family members, potential security clearances. Very unusual." Bennett frowned. "Security clearances? Why would the VA care about pharmaceutical executives?" Dr. Sterling shrugged. "They mentioned something about classified information protocols, probably just bureaucratic confusion." But I knew exactly what was happening. My Pentagon connections were starting to surface. Colonel Stevens had warned me that media outlets were filing Freedom of Information requests. The Washington Post was preparing a feature article. My 30 years of anonymity were ending whether I participated or not. Victoria was staring at me with growing suspicion. I could see the questions forming in her mind. Why would the Veterans Affairs Office care about her father? What did that phone call really mean? "Dad," she said carefully, "is there anything you want to tell me?" I looked around the table. Patricia Crawford with her patrician disapproval, Bennett with his inherited privilege, the board members with their Ivy League credentials and pharmaceutical industry pedigree, all of them judging me by my old sport jacket and PTSD episodes. None of them knowing that I had connections that could make or break their precious IPO with a single phone call. "Nothing important," I said. After dinner, Victoria walked me to my Honda Civic while Bennett brought their car around. "Dad, what was that about? The VA inquiry?" "Probably just paperwork. You know how government bureaucracy works." She stared at me for a long moment. "Do you know how government bureaucracy works?" "A little." Bennett pulled up in his Porsche. Victoria got in without saying goodbye. Through the passenger window, I could see her on her phone, probably calling someone to find out why the Veterans Affairs Office was asking questions about her family. I drove home to my duplex thinking about performance. Victoria had performed perfectly tonight, poised, professional, completely in control except for the moment when her embarrassing father hit the floor. She'd recovered well, managed the situation, maintained her credibility with the board, but she was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous people in the room are the ones who choose not to perform at all. My phone was ringing when I got home. Pentagon Personnel Office again. Time to stop hiding. The call came at 6:23 a.m. on September 12th, 3 days before the pharmaceutical gala. Mr. Walsh, this is General Robert Hayes. I think it's time we talked. I was sitting on my front porch with my morning coffee, watching the sun come up over Arlington. Mrs. Patterson was getting her newspaper. Miguel Santos was leaving for his job at the post office. Normal people living normal lives. Hello, Bob. It's been a while. 30 years, Doug. 30 years since you disappeared on us. General Hayes, 3 stars, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We'd served together in Vietnam when he was Lieutenant Hayes and I was Sergeant Walsh. I'd pulled him out of an ambush in 1971. He'd been trying to thank me ever since. I didn't disappear. I went private. Doug, I'm calling because the Secretary of Defense wants to present you with the Congressional Medal of Honor next week, at the Pentagon. Full ceremony. The President is coming. I nearly dropped my coffee. Bob, I told Colonel Stevens no ceremonies. That was before the Washington Post started digging into declassified Vietnam records. That was before 47 Medal of Honor nominations became public record. That was before some reporter figured out that the most decorated soldier nobody's ever heard of lives in Arlington, Virginia, and volunteers at the VA hospital. What are you saying? I'm saying your story is coming out whether you cooperate or not. The Post is running a front-page feature on Sunday. The hero who said no, why America's most decorated veteran refuses recognition. They've got your military records, your CIA commendations, interviews with soldiers you saved. It's happening, Doug. I set down my coffee cup. 30 years of quiet anonymity ending because some journalist filed the right Freedom of Information request. Bob, my daughter doesn't know about any of this. Your daughter? Victoria Walsh, CEO of Crawford Pharmaceuticals? You know about Victoria? Doug, we've been keeping tabs on you for 30 years. We know about your daughter, your late wife, your volunteer work. We know you've been a declining honors while living like a church mouse. What we don't know is why. It's complicated. Uncomplicated. The Pentagon ceremony is Friday, September 15th. Same day as some pharmaceutical industry gala your daughter is attending. Secretary Martinez wants you there. The President wants to meet you. This is not a request. Friday, September 15th. Victoria's big night. The industry gala where she'd been preparing to present Crawford Pharmaceuticals to $500 million worth of investors. Bob, if the President is coming, the President specifically requested this ceremony when he learned your story. 23 soldiers rescued under heavy fire. CIA operations that prevented terrorist attacks on American soil. 30 years of classified service that saved American lives. He called you, and I quote, exactly the kind of hero America needs to remember. After the call, I sat on my porch thinking about timing. The universe has a sense of humor. The same night Victoria wanted to prove she belonged among pharmaceutical industry elite, the President of the United States wanted to honor her embarrassing father. My phone rang again. Different number this time. Mr. Walsh, this is Rebecca Martinez, Secretary of Veterans Affairs. I knew the name. Former Marine General, Bronze Star recipient, first Latina to hold the position. Yes, ma'am. Sir, I'm calling personally because I want you to know what your service has meant to the veteran community. Your declassified CIA work saved American lives. Your volunteer work at the VA hospital has helped thousands of veterans get the benefits they've earned. You are, without exaggeration, a national treasure. Secretary Martinez, I appreciate the sentiment, but, sir, I'm also calling because your daughter's pharmaceutical company has applied for federal contracts worth $200 million. Defense Department medical research, Veterans Affairs drug development programs, contracts that require extensive background checks on corporate leadership and their families. The pieces clicked together. Victoria's IPO, the federal contracts, the background checks that would reveal my service record. Secretary Martinez, Does my daughter know about this? The background check results will be available to her company's board of directors next week. Sir, she's going to find out who you really are. The question is whether you want to tell her yourself or let her read it in a government report. What would you recommend? Sir, I'll be attending the pharmaceutical gala Friday night. I was invited to speak about federal research partnerships. I could mention your service record during my remarks. Let the industry know what kind of family produces leaders like Victoria Walsh. That might embarrass her. Sir, having a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient for a father is not an embarrassment. It's the kind of credential that opens doors, builds trust, establishes credibility. Your daughter has spent her career proving she belongs in rooms full of powerful people. She doesn't realize she already has the most powerful connection of all. After Secretary Martinez hung up, I called Victoria's office. Crawford Pharmaceuticals, Victoria Walsh's office. This is her father. Is she available? I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh, but Miss Walsh is in meetings all day preparing for the gala tomorrow night. Can I take a message? Tell her I called. Tell her it's important. I'll let her know. But she didn't call back. Too busy preparing for her big night, proving herself to people who would judge her by her father's old Honda Civic and Walmart clothing. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in 30 years. I called in a favor. Pentagon operator, how may I direct your call? Colonel Patricia Stevens, please. Tell her it's Douglas Walsh. Colonel Stevens. Colonel, I need the guest list for tomorrow night's pharmaceutical gala. Sir, that's not exactly Pentagon information. It is if the Secretary of Veterans Affairs is speaking there. It is if federal contractors are being evaluated. It is if national security background checks are involved. Pause. I'll see what I can do, sir. An hour later, she called back. Mr. Walsh, I have the guest list. 500 pharmaceutical industry leaders, investors, regulatory officials. Some interesting names. Harrison Webb, CFO of Crawford Pharmaceuticals. Dr. Richard Sterling, head of R&D Patricia Crawford, board chair, and about 200 potential investors who collectively control $5 billion in pharmaceutical research funding. Any government officials? Secretary of Veterans Affairs Rebecca Martinez is the keynote speaker. Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services, FDA Commissioner, several Pentagon medical research liaisons. Colonel, I need you to do something for me. Sir? I need you to make sure Secretary Martinez knows who Victoria Walsh's father is. I need you to make sure she has my complete service record available during her speech. Sir? Are you authorizing disclosure of your classified background? For 30 years, I'd kept my service record classified. Not because I was required to, but because I chose to. Because I wanted to live quietly, modestly, without the complications that come with being recognized as a war hero. But Victoria was about to learn the truth anyway. The Washington Post was running their story. The Pentagon was planning a ceremony. The background check for federal contracts would reveal everything. The only question was whether she'd learn about her father's service record from strangers, or whether I'd give her the chance to discover that the man she was ashamed of was actually someone the most powerful people in America wanted to honor. Colonel, I'm authorizing full disclosure. Tomorrow night, Secretary Martinez has my permission to tell the pharmaceutical industry exactly who Douglas Walsh is. Sir, this will change everything for your daughter. Yes, I said. It will. I hung up and sat in my modest duplex, surrounded by the simple life I'd chosen. Tomorrow night, while Victoria was trying to prove she belonged among pharmaceutical elite, Secretary Martinez would reveal that she was the daughter of a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. Victoria wanted to know what real power looked like. She was about to find out. Friday morning, September 15th, the day of the pharmaceutical gala, the day I would keep my promise to Victoria. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. as usual, made coffee in my world's greatest dad mug, and did something I hadn't done in 30 years. I laid out my dress uniform, not to wear, but to pack. It still fit. Navy blue with ribbons and medals I'd earned in Vietnam and during my CIA years. Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Combat Infantry Badge, CIA Intelligence Medal, decorations that told a story Victoria had never bothered to ask about. At 8:15 a.m., I called Arlington Real Estate Services. This is Douglas Walsh. I need to sell my house immediately. Mr. Walsh, immediate sales usually require significant price reductions. I'll take cash offers only, no financing contingencies. closing within 48 hours. Sir, that's very unusual. What's your asking price? I looked around my modest duplex, 1,200 square feet of memories, the place where Victoria had done her homework at my kitchen table, where Mary and I had planned our retirement before cancer took her, where I'd lived quietly for 15 years, trying not to be a burden. $1.2 million. Silence. Sir, comparable properties in your neighborhood sell for about $180,000. Are you sure about that price? Dead sure. Marketed as a prime development opportunity. Arlington location close to Pentagon, walkable to Metro. Some investor will want the land. By noon, I had 3 cash offers. I accepted the highest. $1.2 million from Highland Development Group, closing Monday morning. At 2:30 p.m., I called Veterans Housing Initiative. This is Douglas Walsh. I want to make a donation. $1.2 million. Cash donation. I'll have the funds available Monday afternoon. At 4 p.m., I received the call I'd been expecting. Dad, where are you? Victoria's voice was tight with stress. At home, packing. Packing for what? Dad, you can't come to the gala. We discussed this. I'm not coming to your gala, Victoria. I'm keeping my promise. What promise? You said I was a burden who should disappear. I'm disappearing. Dad, what are you talking about? Monday morning I close on the house sale. Monday afternoon I drive to North Carolina. There's a small town outside Asheville where nobody knows me, nobody judges me, and nobody calls me a burden. Dad, you're scaring me. You can't just leave. Why not? It's what you wanted. That's not what I meant. Victoria, you meant exactly what you said. And you know what? You were right. I am holding you back. Tonight, you'll give your presentation to 500 industry leaders without worrying about your embarrassing father dropping to the floor. Dad, please, don't do this. It's already done. The house is sold. My things are packed. By Sunday, I'll be gone. At 6 p.m., Colonel Stevens called. Mr. Walsh, we're expecting you at the Pentagon ceremony tonight. Colonel, I won't be attending. Sir, the President is expecting to meet you. Give the President my apologies. Tell him I had a family obligation. Sir, the Congressional Medal of Honor can be mailed to my new address. I'll text you the details next week. At 7 p.m., Secretary Martinez called. Mr. Walsh, I'm at the Willard Hotel preparing for the pharmaceutical gala. I have your complete service record. Are you sure you want me to proceed without you present? Proceed with what? Sir, I plan to mention your service during my keynote address. Your daughter's industry should know what kind of family produces leaders like Victoria Walsh. Secretary Martinez, my daughter asked me to disappear. I'm honoring that request, but she never asked me to take my story with me. Sir, when I tell 500 pharmaceutical executives that Victoria Walsh is the daughter of a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, how do you think they'll react? They'll probably want to meet me. And when they learn you're not available, they'll ask Victoria why. At 8:30 p.m., while Victoria was delivering her presentation to potential investors, I loaded my Honda Civic with everything I owned. 47 years of life in Arlington fit into 6 boxes and 2 suitcases. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to a note. Victoria, the house sold for $1.2 million. I donated every penny to Veterans Housing Initiative. They're building apartments for homeless veterans. At least one old soldier's sacrifice will help other old soldiers. Dad. At 9:15 p.m., as I drove south on I-95, my phone started buzzing. Victoria calling, then Bennett, then people I didn't recognize. I turned off my phone. Secretary Martinez was keeping her promise to honor my service. Victoria would learn tonight that her embarrassing father was actually someone the most powerful people in America wanted to meet. But I wouldn't be there to see her reaction. I'd kept my promise, too. I disappeared exactly when she asked me to. The difference was, I took my dignity with me. By the time I reached Richmond, Virginia, the story was already breaking. I stopped at a truck stop diner for coffee and saw the news ticker on CNN, Pentagon honors missing war hero as pharmaceutical CEO learns father's secret. The diner was nearly empty. Just me, a trucker named Earl, and a waitress who kept the coffee coming. I sat in a corner booth and watched my life become national news. Crazy story, Earl said, nodding at the TV. Some rich lady's dad turns out to be a war hero, but nobody can find him. Pentagon says he was supposed to get the Medal of Honor tonight. I stirred my coffee and said nothing. My phone, turned back on for emergencies, had 37 missed calls. Victoria, Bennett, numbers I didn't recognize, Pentagon Personnel Office, Washington Post reporters, even Good Morning America. The first voicemail was from Victoria, recorded at 9:47 p.m. Dad, where are you? Secretary Martinez just told 500 people that you're a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. People are asking to meet you. Dad, I had no idea. Please call me. The second was from Bennett at 10:23 p.m. Doug, the investors want to fast-track their commitments. They're fascinated by your story. Where are you? Victoria is frantic. The third was from Patricia Crawford at 11:15 p.m. Douglas, I owe you the deepest apology. I had no idea who you were. Please come home so we can discuss this properly. I deleted them all without listening to the rest. At midnight, I was in a motel outside Durham when Victoria called directly. I answered. Dad, thank God. Where are you? Keeping my promise. Dad, Secretary Martinez said you saved 23 soldiers. She said you worked for the CIA. She said the president wanted to honor you tonight. All true. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked. Dad, the investors went crazy. They want to meet you. They're calling you an American treasure. Bennett's family is asking why we never mentioned your service. The board wants to make you an advisor. What do you want, Victoria? I want you to come home. Why? Because you're my father. Yesterday I was a burden who should disappear. Dad, I was wrong. I was stupid and cruel, and I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't change what you said. Sorry doesn't change what you meant. Please, let me make this right. Victoria, you got everything you wanted tonight. $500 million IPO. Industry respect. Investor confidence. You did it without your embarrassing father dropping to the floor. Congratulations. Dad, don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I'm disappearing exactly like you asked. I hung up and turned off my phone. Saturday morning, I reached the North Carolina mountains and found a small cabin for rent outside Asheville. 2 bedrooms, stone fireplace, mountain view. The landlord was a veteran named Pete who asked no questions when I paid 6 months' rent in cash. Running from something? He asked, helping me unload my Honda. Running to something, I corrected. Sunday morning, the Washington Post ran their feature story, The Hero Who Vanished. Why America's Most Decorated Veteran Refuses Recognition. Full front-page coverage with my military photos and testimonials from soldiers I'd saved 50 years ago. The article included quotes from pharmaceutical industry leaders who'd attended the gala. We would have invested based on Victoria Walsh's character alone, but learning about her father's service record gives us complete confidence in this family's integrity. There was also this. Miss Walsh declined to comment on her father's whereabouts, saying only, "My father taught me about sacrifice. I'm still learning what that means." Monday morning, Highland Development closed on my house. By noon, Veterans Housing Initiative had received my $1.2 million donation, the largest single gift in their history. Monday evening, they announced plans for Walsh House, 42 apartments for homeless veterans in Arlington, Virginia. Tuesday, Victoria's assistant called my disconnected home number 43 times. Wednesday, Victoria hired a private investigator to find me. Thursday, the investigator called Pete's cabin. Pete told him I'd gone fishing and wouldn't be back for a week. Friday, exactly 1 week after the gala that changed everything, I sat on my cabin porch drinking coffee from my World's Greatest Dad mug and reading about my daughter's success in the Wall Street Journal. Crawford Pharmaceuticals IPO, most successful pharmaceutical offering in 5 years. Victoria Walsh, rising star to watch. Congressional Medal of Honor. Recipient father. Missing and unavailable for comment. My phone rang. Virginia area code. I let it go to voicemail. Victoria was learning the hardest lesson of all. Some disappearances are permanent. Some burdens, once lifted, don't come back. 6 months later, I was sitting on my cabin porch in the Blue Ridge Mountains, reading about Victoria in Forbes magazine. Pharmaceutical visionary, how Victoria Walsh built an empire while honoring family legacy. The article mentioned my Congressional Medal of Honor 3 times. It called me an inspiration to his daughter's leadership philosophy. It quoted Victoria saying, "My father taught me that true strength comes from service to others." What it didn't mention was that Victoria hadn't spoken to me since that night in Durham. She'd tried. The private investigator found my cabin in October. but I'd moved to a different mountain town by then. She'd sent Christmas cards to my old VA hospital. They were forwarded to me unopened. She'd donated $1 million to Veterans Housing Initiative in my name and invited me to the dedication ceremony. I didn't attend. Last month, Walsh House opened in Arlington. 42 apartments for homeless veterans, built with my house sale money. The dedication plaque read, "In honor of Douglas Walsh, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, who understood that true service never ends." Victoria gave the dedication speech. I watched it online from my cabin in the mountains. She looked older, tired, successful but hollow. "My father taught me about sacrifice," she told the crowd of veterans and dignitaries. "I'm still learning what that means. Dad, wherever you are, I hope someday you'll come home so I can show you what I've learned." The camera panned across the audience. Veterans in wheelchairs, families with children, Pentagon officials, Arlington community leaders, people whose lives my $1.2 million donation had changed, people who understood what burden really meant. This morning I received a handwritten letter from Victoria. No return address. She must have hired someone to find my latest location. "Dad, I know you probably won't read this, but I needed to try. The Congressional Medal of Honor ceremony is being rescheduled. The President still wants to meet you. I'll be there if you want me, or I'll stay away if you prefer. Your choice. I love you. Victoria." I folded the letter and put it in my kitchen drawer next to 17 others she'd sent over the past 6 months. Maybe someday I'll read them. Maybe someday I'll answer. But not today. Today, I'm exactly where Victoria wanted me to be, disappeared. If you're watching this, remember that words have consequences. Sometimes when you tell someone to leave, they actually do. And sometimes they take their love with them. The end.